There's a good one. Holy cow. Yes, yes. Now things got interesting.
So here we are, we're back home, and it is super cold here back home. As you can see, Bobby wanted me to do this video. I said, I'm doing it by the fireplace because it's cold. And when you've been in Florida for the last almost 2 weeks, where it's been almost 80 degrees every day, I got a little soft being down there in Florida. It was really nice and spoiled us, and get back home and we have like unseasonably cold, well below zero lows, and kind of nasty. So I kind of wish I was back in Florida. But with that being said, we just got done at Harris Chain, and I'll take the finish. I'll take a top 30 anytime you can get a paycheck, especially by the matter of seconds that I'm finding out that I did. I'll take it. And you know, Harris Chain was an interesting one. You always go to Florida, and it can be an emotional roller coaster, to say the least. So we left Conroe, went straight down to my parents in Florida, did some fun fishing for 4 or 5 days, and then we headed up to Harris. Well, when we got to Florida, I mean, it was shorts and flip-flops, sunny in the 80s the entire time. They had a cold snap before that. I mean, everybody might remember the Panhandle actually even had snow. So when you get cold like that and then immediate warm temperatures for that long a time, we had a full moon coming. I really had suspected it was going to be a full-blown bedding type of tournament, and you know, I thought that's how it was going to play out. But when you go to the Harris Chain of Lakes, I love the Harris Chain of Lakes. I've had some great finishes there. I've almost won a couple times there, and I love it as a fishery, but you just kind of have to make some decisions. 2 days of practice is not a lot of time to see Harris Chain, because I think there's about 5 or 6 different lakes in the chain, so you can't see it all. So I'd kind of made my game plan of I was going to spend 1 day on Griffin and 1 day on Harris, and make the most of it. And first day of practice, got over on Griffin and really didn't do much 3/4 of the day in. And then I went and checked some bedding areas, some canals and stuff, and didn't see much. So I just wanted to get over and spend my first day of practice over in Harris, and the conditions were perfect. It was sunny, 80 degrees, not a lot of wind. And I got over to Harris and went down a stretch where I'd caught fish in the past. I fished a Toyota there 2 years ago about the same time and had a good tournament. So I got over there and went down that stretch, and I mean, it was on fire. I mean, I had a screw lock on my bait. I was just flipping, and I mean, I shook off probably at least 20 some fish that afternoon. Didn't know if they were all scoreable, but I just knew I had a lot of bites. And typically in Florida, if you get a lot of bites in an area, there's a lot of fish. And you know, there's a lot of small fish, but there's usually some good ones mixed in. So, you know, with that being said, that second day of practice, I felt like, don't spread yourself too thin. Just focus on Harris, try to find 2 or 3 other options in there, and make the most of it. So I did. The second day of practice wasn't as good, but I was able to expand on my pattern, and had several areas that I felt pretty comfortable with going into the tournament. So fast forward, you know, now we get a day off of kind of a day off to work on our tackle, have our meeting, and then competition starts, where we used to have 2 groups. Now there's all 66 of us anglers out there fishing, and got out there the first day. I was pretty excited, got on my key stretch, basically had it to myself, which sometimes in Florida, that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not always the best, because it means you've missed something. And got in there, and it started out decent, but it definitely wasn't as good as I'd hoped. There was a breeze blowing in there, which created a little bit of chop, and sometimes that can hurt the fishing in an area in Florida. So.
Yes. There we go, finally.
Pounds, 10 ounces.
210. All right, we're on the board at 210. Yes.
Blew up the hole.
Like I said, got in, caught a few, and I'll tell you what, this is one thing to remember. In practice, you know, I didn't get to fish everything. I'd fish a certain area and then not fish all of it. And I'm like, I fished, let's say, a 200-yard stretch and get some bites on it, but then 300 or 400 yards down, it all looks the same. It's like, well, I'll just hit that in the tournament. Well, first day of the tournament, I start down on the stretch where I had the bites. Well, I see 2 or 3 other guys start down on the other end of this that I thought looked pretty good. So I fished my little stretch, catch a few. Well, now I don't want to go fish, halfway through the first period, I've got a few fish. I don't want to go fish behind some guys. So I run to my next spot. Well, I noticed that it was Chris Lane, Bobby Lane, and Alton Jr. So I picked a really good area. It's just the sweet spot was actually down there where they started, but it is what it is. I went to my other area and caught a few fish, but primarily I caught most of my fish flipping that day, and I had to avoid the wind. The wind really hurt my key stretch where I had most of the bites, so I kind of had to go to my second and third areas to salvage the day. But if I remember right, when it was all said and done, I wasn't really sitting where I'd hoped. I think I was sitting, where was I sitting? Like 50th, but I wasn't that far out of it. It was, they ended up catching them, I think quite a bit better that first day than I thought, but this is when it starts going off in your head, is halfway through the day when you realize a lot of guys started out with no fish for like the first hour or two, maybe even into the second period, and then they just went on a tear. And then you start doing the math in your head. You're like, well, I haven't seen any of these guys. And they went from catching nothing to catching a lot. And it really made me start to wonder, was Lake Apopka the deal? And what was interesting about that is a week before our event, we got a text message, which just never happens. We got a text message from MLF saying, basically, by the way, there was a big fish kill in Lake Apopka, but you can still fish there. So if there was any inkling in my head in practice to go spend time on Lake Apopka, a lake I've never been on, why would I go even look at it if there's been a big fish kill? So fast forward, obviously that's, if you followed the tournament, that's where the tournament went down at. I think 8 of the top 10 were in Lake Apopka. So, not much I can do with it about that at that point. I opted, going into the second day, I was in 50th place, not where I wanted to be, but I wasn't that far out from the money cut line, and I think I was maybe 10 or 12 pounds out of the top 12. So, at this point, do I go to, completely scrap everything and go pre-fishing the second day, or do you stick with what you got? Well, the first day we had a pretty strong south wind that kind of blew out my key area on the north shore. So the second day they were calling for a pretty strong north wind, and I'm like, well, hopefully that will open up my north shore area that didn't really produce the first day, and then hopefully with what I've got the other areas, I can maybe have a great day, and who knows, have a big comeback. So second day I start up on my north shore area, and I catch a few, and it's starting to look pretty promising, and then it just kind of fizzles out, and I don't quite understand that. I mean, that's one of the big mysteries of Florida. You have cover in 6 inches and a foot of water that looks amazing. And for 100 yards out to 5 foot of water, you have cover that looks amazing. And you can burn up a lot of time just in a small area. And I don't know if those fish are there and they just don't bite because the conditions aren't right, or if they literally just move in and out that much. But it was one of those things that halfway through that first period, I'm like, this is not panning out like I had hoped. And there's a good breeze blowing. I've got to make something happen here. So I run down to one little patch I had. There was an area I found that it was a patch of hydrilla and eelgrass outside the Kissimmee grass. So a little bit different or deeper water, where I figured if there's fish staging to spawn or any kind of concentration of good fish, and especially big fish. I mean, the first day I didn't have I think my biggest fish was like a 2.9. And I'm like, I need a heavy hitters fish, and I need some quality fish to make a comeback in this thing. So I opted to go to that eelgrass and hydrilla spot and make the most of it. And I pull in there, I think about with maybe 10 or 15 minutes left in that first period, and I catch a couple scorables. And at this point, I'm like, I need to kind of grind this out. And I know it's hard to believe. I got in there, I'm like, with the conditions, I'm like, they got to eat a bladed jig. I mean, it just seems too perfect for it. If they're not going to bite flipping, a bladed jig's a great way to cover water, and I know it'll catch big fish. And
2.8.
I started the second period there, caught a couple more, so I'm chiseling away at my deficit, and it's starting to look pretty promising. And I'm like, I need to just commit to this area, because if there's ever a spot where I could catch a big one, it's here, and make a comeback, it's on this spot. And we sat in there, and I think it was the beginning of the third period. I stand back up, and I mean, just to give you an idea how I was working that bladed jig, it was crazy. And what I was kind of envisioning, I'm like, okay, maybe there's fish spawning down there on the bottom, and that's why they're only biting, you know, soft plastics when you're dropping it in the bed. I was taking that bladed jig, I would throw it out and physically let it sink to the bottom. I'd kind of pop my rod tip just to get the blade, you know, vibrating on that jig, and I was just crawling it. I mean, a lot of times I didn't even know if I was getting the blade to work, and every once in a while I'd pop it out of the grass.
There's a good one. Holy cow. Yes, yes, yes. Now things got interesting. Mm-hmm.
0 ounces.
4-pounder. All right. How about that? Yes.
On day one, I had 9 fish for 16 pounds, and I believe the money cut after day one was kind of like what we predicted. It was 25 pounds. I figured 25 pounds a day to get paid, 30 pounds a day to make the top 20, the knockout round. And lo and behold, the second day, I caught 10 fish for 26 pounds. So the weights fell off quite a bit, and but I still managed to make it into that 30th place.
Fish. That's a good one. Really good one. And that's how you get back in this thing right there. Freaking unbelievable. Yes. Stupid minnow.
4 pounds, 12 ounces.
412. Do you want a picture? How about that? A 412. That's way to make the fish right there.
But anyway, I caught a 412. That was my biggest fish, with a 412 at the beginning of that third period. And that really chopped off a lot of my deficit. And I was able to work myself up to 27th place. So I was kind of secured into the money at that point. And so here I was literally, I think at one point I got 4 or 5 pounds away from making it into the knockout round. So I was
2 pounds out of it.
Yeah, I really felt like there was some hope that with 1 or 2 more good key bites, I could potentially make the knockout round. Well, it kind of stalled out there, and I was at 27th place, and I was starting to feel pretty good, because I think there was 30 minutes left, and I really was confident that I could catch a couple more scorables. And what was kind of interesting about that is, while I was fishing that area, Alton Jr. was kind of fishing that area too. I could tell he'd been in there as well. And he'd kind of fish around me, and he was giving me plenty of space. Well, it was getting to the point where it's the last 30 minutes of the day, and Alton, he was having a really tough day, and I'd been fishing up shallow on this spot, and he's like, hey, do you care if I get up there shallow? I'm like, no problem. I've already beat it up. You're not going to catch any fish up there. And so I'm working out on my key spot, and to, you know, where I've caught my big ones.
Dang it.
Good bounce.
Can we do it again?
You got one more try.
Okay. No. Dang it. You got 3 tries. God. He catches a big one. Nice. You had to catch that, and I catch a 1-7.
And it was kind of funny is I've got my trolling motor on anchor lock out here on the deeper stuff, and I fire out there and I set the hook on one. About the same time I see Alton set the hook on one right where I'd been fishing 15 minutes earlier. And I'm fighting mine and I'm feeling pretty excited that, you know, I've got another scoreable that's going to move me up. Well, I get mine in and I see Alton land his, and it's a good one. Well, I focus on mine. Lo and behold, mine is a 1-7. Minimum scoreable bass was a 1-8. So quite a few heartbreaks in this tournament with 1-7s. I mean, nothing worse than a 1-7. So I got to throw my fish back. It didn't help. Alton had a 4-4. So he went from being out of the money to now he's, I think, 30th place. So he's right behind me. And I'm like, I was excited for Alton, but at the same time, I'm like, man, if he catches one more, he's going to move ahead of me and potentially even knock me out. Well, fast forward 10 minutes or so, Alton gets bumped back. I get bumped to 30th place. So I went from being securely in the money to being the guy on the cut line. And so now I'm kind of sweating bullets. You're wanting the clock to run out. You really want to catch a good one to get off of the cut line. And I kid you not, it was a minute, like 55 seconds, because my boat official says 2 minutes. I fire out, I set the hook on another fish. I reel it in, swing it in the boat, and I'm feeling like, cool, I got a scoreable bass. This will get me off the line. I swing it in, it comes off, hits the floor. So you know what that means, 2-minute penalty. So now I'm done for the day.
Double whammy. I'm done for the day, aren't I?
Yes, sir.
Son of a gun. Nothing like a minute and a half left and get a fish landing violation.
30 seconds.
And then I put it on the scale, 1-7 again. So I'm done for the day, a 1-7, and I'm watching Alton over there. I'm like, if he sets the hook on one, he's gonna knock me out and I'm not gonna make it. And so I had to just sit there, let the clock run out.
3, 2, 1. If everything stands, the next 15 minutes, you finished in 30th place, bro.
Now the praying.
Then the period of sweating like you can't, nerves, everything. Because if you're on the cut line, you know, you just expect somebody's going to catch one with a minute to go, and it takes them a few minutes to get them registered. And I had to make the long boat ride back in, just wondering if, you know, I was going to fall from 30th to 31st or something. And lo and behold, we made it. We made it. We finished 30th, got the $10,000 check, got the good points, all that. I got to tell you a funny story. Not a funny story for him, but a very relieving story for me. I'd heard that Casey Ashley, this was a story he told on his social media. He literally had, I think, a 110 that he swung in the boat 2 seconds or 3 seconds after the period had run out. So had he put that fish in the gunnel, he would have knocked me to 31st place. So Casey, I appreciate that. I know you don't like it, but thank you for being a little slow on getting that fish in the boat. But it just shows you that's how close it can be. And that's what I love about Every Fish Counts, the score tracker and all that. The suspense the entire day is just never ending. I mean, it's not like a 5 fish, you throw them in the live well, go up and hope you have enough. This is just nonstop craziness the entire day. So there it is. I survived the Harris chain, got out of there with a paycheck and some decent points. But, you know, with that being said, for me to make Red Crest, I've got to continue to have better events as the season goes on. So I'm hoping I can take this top 30 momentum. We're going to Lake Murray next. Lake Murray's been another great lake for me. If you followed last time, I think I finished 3rd there. So I'm hoping I can go to Lake Murray, have another great event, move up those standings. And like I said, at the end of the season, make sure I'm right in there for Red Crest. So Harris was fun. Looking forward to the next time.